tax election. Now, let's have a compromise here. Why don't we have a housing tax election?
Let's look at the unfiltered reality. What's happening in Canada under the Trudeau administration? The streets of our cities, like Toronto, are becoming the setting for a movie that no one wants to see. More crime, more fear, fewer answers. Every crime stat that goes up isn't just a number. They are lives, they are families being affected, while the government seems more interested in saving face than in saving its people. And then, what about the economy? The promises of a green future sound good, but they feel empty when they translate into lost jobs and opportunities evaporating in front of our eyes. Environmental regulations have put a damper not only on energy production, but also on the hopes of many Canadians who depended on those jobs for a living. We're exporting jobs to the south faster than we can call the climate agenda, leaving behind once thriving communities. And while this is happening, Trudeau seems more like a spectator than a leader. Trump's recent election should have us on alert, prepared to strengthen our economy and security. But instead of action, we see indecision. Leadership means making tough decisions and preparing for the future, not just waiting for things to work themselves out. Canada deserves more than promises and policies that don't keep pace with our real needs. Canadians from coast to coast are saying enough. They are tired of seeing their country left behind, their concerns ignored. How long are we going to allow this situation to continue? We need change, and we need it now. And what about security at our borders and streets? Trudeau seems to live in a parallel world, one where problems vanish just by talking about them. But the reality is different. Rising crime is leaving our people vulnerable, and the government's responses are so superficial that they barely scratch the surface of the problem. It is not just about implementing more laws. It's about making existing laws actually work to protect us. Canada's relationship with the United States is on a tightrope. With Trump back and his policies threatening to shake up our economy, where's Trudeau's robust plan to deal with this? It seems that there is no urgency, only delayed reactions that always leave us one step behind. An effective leader anticipates, not just responds when it's too late. And let's talk about unemployment and the economy. Trudeau's policies are forcing businesses and workers to look south, where opportunities abound and regulations don't strangle their possibilities. Is this the future we want for Canada? A country that does not retain its talent but exports it? It is frustrating to see how the potential of our great country is limited by a lack of vision and political courage. We need a government that doesn't just think about the next international headline, but actually gets to work here at home, where it matters. Rhetoric is no longer enough. We are tired of empty words and broken promises. It's time to demand accountability and real action. Canadians' patience has a limit, and Trudeau is about to find out. When will you really start listening to the people you're supposed to serve? Not tomorrow. We need answers and changes now. Trudeau promised sunny ways, but what we have seen are storm clouds that threaten to become a perfect storm. Failed gun policies have done nothing but put our communities at risk, while the administration seems more focused on philosophical debates than on the palpable reality of insecurity on our streets. The economy is reeling, and each new environmental regulation looks like a hammer directly hitting the oil and gas industry, which has been the economic engine of provinces like Alberta. How are these workers and their families expected to survive? This government must remember that its duty is to Canadians, not to a global agenda that forgets those at home. The promise of innovation and jobs in green technologies has yet to materialize into anything concrete. Meanwhile, what we do see is how Canadian companies take their investments and go south, where policies are friendlier. Trudeau needs to understand that he cannot sacrifice Canadian jobs on the altar of political idealization.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's failed gun policies are putting Toronto at risk. This year, there have been 126 more shootings in Toronto compared to last year, and Peel Regional Police...
And the situation with the United States only puts more pressure on an administration that seems to be always reacting, never leading. With Trump implementing policies that directly challenge Canada, our response cannot simply be to wait and see. We need leadership that stands up for Canada firmly and clearly. This is not the time for hesitation or for policies that only seek international applause while ignoring harsh, national realities. Canadians need more than ever a leader who not only speaks but acts. A leader who understands the complexities of our time and does not get lost in the vanity of superficial politics. Patience is running out, and the actions we take now will define the future of our country. Are we going to continue to allow this cycle of inaction and complacency to continue? It's time for a change. It's time for our leaders to rise to the occasion and really start putting Canada first.
After 9 years of brutal assaults on Canadian energy workers, the Prime Minister just delivered a knockout punch with a production cap on oil and gas development.
With each passing day, Canadians' frustration grows as they watch the opportunities fade. Under the Trudeau administration, we seem to have witnessed a political paralysis where much is promised but little is delivered. Critical infrastructure is aging and innovative solutions are scarce. Where are those promised investments that were going to revolutionize our economy? The Trudeau administration seems to be more interested in gesture politics than tangible results. Press conferences can be persuasive, but at the end of the day, it's the actions that count. Canadians don't need more rhetoric. They need real solutions that address today's problems, not promises of a tomorrow that never comes. The cost of living is skyrocketing, and what we get in return is insufficient. Meanwhile, Trudeau is pressing ahead with policies that seem disconnected from the needs of ordinary people. Economic insecurity is not just a headline in the newspaper. It's a daily reality for millions of Canadians who feel their government has failed them. And while we're talking about failures, the issue of public safety has been nothing but a disaster under his leadership. How can a Prime Minister justify an increase in crime on his watch? Promises of justice, reform ring hollow when families don't feel safe in their own homes. It is clear that we need a change of direction. We need a leader who not only understands the challenges of our time, but also has the courage and conviction to meet them. We cannot afford another cycle of indecision and half measures that only perpetuate problems rather than solve them. Canadians deserve better. They deserve a government that not only thinks about the next election, but about the next generations. It is time for our politicians to stop playing politics and start governing with the seriousness and commitment that these challenging times require. Trudeau has had his chance and has shown that he is not up to the task. It's time to pass the torch to someone who truly puts Canada first, who prioritizes the security, stability, and prosperity of all Canadians over political and image interests. We are at a critical point. Trudeau's policies have not only failed to keep the promise of a prosperous and secure Canada, but have also sown division and mistrust. True leadership unites, not divides. It solves, it does not evade. It's time to ask ourselves, are we better off now than we were a decade ago? The answer, for many, is a resounding no. Trudeau's approach to foreign policy and his handling of the energy crisis are clear examples of leadership that lacks a long-term vision. While other countries strengthen their economies and secure their energy independence, Canada seems to be going backwards, constrained by policies that do not look beyond the next election cycle. The management of the pandemic and the post-COVID economic recovery showed more of the same. Big initial promises followed by an execution that left many wondering what went wrong. Canadians have been looking for leadership and instead have found a vacuum, a series of palliative measures that do not address the roots of our problems. It is frustrating and sad to see how a country with so much potential is held back by a lack of political courage. Working families, young people looking for their first job, entrepreneurs struggling to keep their businesses afloat, all feel the weight of a government that seems to have lost its way. We cannot continue in this direction. We need real change, not just a change of faces or promises. We need policies that reflect the real needs of Canadians, that focus on strengthening our economy from the inside out, that secure our cities and our borders, and that restore faith that our government can and will act in our best interests.